In an age of manufactured noise, silence is a weapon and information is the battlefield. Behind every breaking news sample lies a shadow story, a whisper of the paranormal, a blueprint of a cover. We don't just report the fact, we dissect fiction until the truth has nowhere left to hide. Pull from the halls of power to the edges of the unknown. Brace yourself. The conspiracy wars begin now.
Welcome everybody to the Conspiracy Wars. Snowpocalypse here.
Yeah, if anybody listening is listening from somewhere warm, it is not here. Not at all.
I've never wanted to live in California so bad.
Oh, I know. We have someone within my office, and she had a family emergency, and she's Mexican, and that made me very jealous. Like, man, I want to have a family emergency in Mexico right now.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
No, I definitely genuinely feel bad that she has to go through something bad, but like, still, cup half full. You got to take care of this in Mexico now.
Yeah,
it is frozen right there, like extra frozen in the blizzards. Have you've been indoors, obviously, right?
Working indoors,
yeah, but near windows.
No, it's pretty sealed up.
It's been crazy. It's been really bananas. Or maybe I'm just fortunate enough to be near windows now. I'll see major clouds blow through and I can't see nothing.
Really?
Yeah, just blizzard.
Oh, wow.
Tons. Yeah. Like
I thought you were talking about like an open window. Like, oh yeah, it gets a little gusty from time to time. But
no, so you could see it turn into like Game of Thrones kind of like, holy shit.
Yeah. Big time.
Yeah. I think we're going to have a really cold one this year.
Yeah. Well, the last few years, I feel like there was like a farmer's almanac thing that was saying like it was supposed to be the coldest winter in 100 years. But it was like pretty mild, you know?
Yeah.
And then, I know last year was kind of had some cold snaps. That's the thing. It's like we're getting like, stages of it. It's like really freezing. And then like, I mean, wasn't it like 2 weeks ago? It was like t-shirt weather, right?
Yeah, for a spell. Yeah.
Yeah, for like 1 week. It was like, shirt off and wildly warm. Got a Chinook. That's what I used to like about living in Calgary.
Yeah, because of the Chinook.
Yeah. It was a good time. Like it would be like that, like reliably, like, it would be like the middle of friggin' January. And then all of a sudden you'd get 2 weeks where it was just, a sweater weather and you're walking around outside and it's almost like spring, and then it would snow again. You're like, fuck, back to it.
Back to it for at least.
But it's nice to get a little break in between. You're like, oh man, then you go out. It's like really nice and sunny and it's friggin' warm and like, oh yeah, a little break from the winter. But I no such luck in Edmonton.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. When does your winter break in Edmonton?
I have no idea.
You didn't stay for an entire winter?
Oh no, winter. Like I don't recall, but like I lived there during winter on 2 separate years. So it was like I was there for the winter in the summer, and then I moved back to BC, and then I ended up moving back there again, like in a summer in a different year, I think, and then spent a winter through there, and then I was like, yeah, fuck that. It was so cold. Like I remember my car doors freezing shut.
Yeah.
And I was the only place that had ever happened before. I'm what the fuck? Like I couldn't open my door to go to work. I'm pretty sure I called in sick because I'm like, I can't open my door. I was like boiling water trying to get it to melt and get my car open.
I've heard of people that like just do not go outside when it's at its coldest.
Yeah.
Over there, and over there it's extra. Like it's not like here. It's not like many other places in the world because it's so flat.
My sister was living up in Fort McMurray for a spell.
Oh,
yeah,
that's up there
for like I think she was up there for I want to say like 5 or 6 years. She met her husband up there.
Oh, cool.
And they used to post videos sometimes on their Facebook, right, where like throw a mug of hot water up in the air and it would freeze and then come down. You froze it, It's wild.
Yeah, and we're going through it right now. Today wasn't so bad, but this winter I can already feel in my bones. It's one of those like I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I can't explain the beats of nature.
Mm-hmm.
This one has the makings.
Yeah. And I've noticed a lot of homeless camps popping up again, like down by my work and stuff, especially, it's kind of like down in the industrial area. And they've got like these little tent cities kind of set up again, but they're kind of trying to stay out of the way because they're getting torn down now, right? They used to let them just keep them rolling, right? But now they're knocking them down. Although I think they're going to probably let them ride out the winter here. Because it must be, I was just thinking it must be fucking rough. Like I saw all these tents and I'm like, oh my God, I would not want to be in a tent right now. And these guys are probably like fucking, drugged out. So they got like their fucking toes exposed or something like that, and just passed out for fucking 4 hours. Like you would wake up and your toes would fall off. I feel like.
I would feel like too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like there must be so much fucking frostbite going around like with the homeless community.
Yeah. Maybe they know to like to prepare enough not to have that happen.
Maybe, but like I mean, you see them anyways when they're like drugging out and they're like bent over, doing the zombie stance. Like there's no covering your back, like your back's hanging out exposed. Even just that, right? I mean, you just get skin burn.
Is it insensitive to try to ask these questions? Because like it's all well and good you and me sitting in a nice, cozy, warm room when like
they can't hear me.
Yeah, we're talking not too many feet away from us. There is probably a camp that we could walk up to and be like, "Yo, what's it like?"
Yeah.
Like, do you have frostbite?
Sometimes I'm like, fuck, I kind of like if I didn't have a family, I would totally just be like, yeah, I spend the night here and just see what document it like fucking Hunter S. Thompson style. Maybe even like fucking take a hit of that shit and
see what it's like.
See what it's like. Yeah.
Walk a mile in your shoes.
Not.
Yeah. So then as we're like going forward in our day-to-day lives, we're like, yep, I can see how that can happen. And like, how can you see that? Listen, you don't understand. You got to live a day. Once you live a day, like you get it. I'm not going there, but I know it.
Yeah. Cut to, can you spare some change?
Yeah.
Aren't you that journalist that went missing 5 years ago?
Yeah, but the spirits got me.
Yeah.
Now I'm hooked.
I'm just researching a book.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a way to do it. Myself, if that's one of the things I want to do if I had balls is just like ask a bunch of the camp people questions. Like I'm genuinely curious.
Yeah. Are there any bodies around here?
Yeah. Are a lot of you dying in like en masse? And like we're just not hearing about like cleaning up the bodies.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, you don't hear about every death in the city, right? You hear about like tragedies usually, like if a child is killed, by a passing car or something like that, right? But like, you don't hear about every death from like, oh yeah, a guy died from an overdose on, Main and 3rd the other day.
Well, I think it's a rule to not report on suicide.
Well, that's suicide, yeah, but like what overdoses and shit like that. You think they would, might say like, oh, a man died after he was found overdosed in front of the library there the other day, right? Like,
well, wouldn't that count as suicide?
I don't think so.
No, I would count it as suicide.
Well, no, I think that would be like if you were classified under a coroner or something. I don't think they would put you under suicide because it would be an I think they would call it misadventure or something like that. You know what I mean? Where it's like you were trying to get a high and it got away on you and you died, right? It wasn't an intentional. Suicide is an intent to kill yourself, right?
Yeah, but if you're knowingly going down this path, like, yo, you're on drugs. Yeah, I know.
That's skydiving or something, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's not suicide if your parachute doesn't open, right?
Yeah, no, that's true.
You're doing something dangerous and there's a chance you could die.
But we've put out enough information. Like if we said don't ever skydive and we see people skydiving, like, yo, that's going to kill you. Stop skydiving. It's a problem. And then like, yo, did you just go skydiving? Yeah. Why? We told you not to. I know. Like, so what you're doing is suicidal. You knew it ahead of time, but you did it anyways.
Yeah. But that's not how it is.
No, it's too much of a gray area to call it that.
Yeah.
But that's why
I think it would be, I think it's called like misadventure or something like that, like when someone dies accidentally like that, hiking or something like that,
So I think what the tightrope walk they do on the news is they're trying to avoid copycats. Like someone watches the news and like they report on a bunch of art. Yo, there's people doing arson now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm all for that. Let's go. I want to be the next arsonist. Then you get a copycat,
sure,
or the serial killer on the news. So they like any suicide. They're like, no, absolutely not. Don't report on that.
They don't usually, unless it's somebody of note. Like I remember. Right, the director Tony Scott. He jumped off of a bridge.
Really?
Yeah.
The guy who had all the the Great Scott pictures.
Yeah.
Whoa.
That did like I don't know
I didn't
Blade
know that.
Runner or like Alien. I can't remember which ones he did, but like
Cameron.
No,
James,
Ridley. That was Ridley Scott.
Ridley
that did
Scott.
The other ones, right? But like his brother Tony Scott did the other like a few of the other ones.
Oh, okay. Now I'm seeing it.
Yeah. Not necessarily Alien, but like he was a Hollywood director. Like he did, I'm almost certain he did that movie Man on Fire. Did you ever watch that with Denzel Washington?
I did.
Yeah, that was a great movie. I'm like 100% certain he did that movie. Yeah.
And he jumped off a bridge.
Yeah. They're like the Brooklyn Bridge or something.
When about?
Oh, geez, that would have been like probably like 2010 or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't hear that one at all.
Well, yeah, I guess maybe they did. Maybe they did want to keep it down low, hey, so people don't do it. I mean, lots of people jump off that bridge every year.
The Brooklyn Bridge?
I guess, yeah. Whatever bridge it was, Golden Gate or whatever, right? I'm sure they all have a number that they have. Every year we scoop up fucking 100 people who jump off. I know I saw a story a while back of somebody who had survived. A couple guys, they were doing stories of guys who jumped off the bridge and survived.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had someone who they caught before he jumped off, I think, recently off the Skyway.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There was like an almost jumper.
Oh, wow.
This was last fall.
Wow.
But that's the only one I've ever heard of. The next closest was someone who jumped out of their vehicle while it was like going up over the Skyway.
Just jumped out of their car?
Yeah, I guess there was an argument and the woman was loopy and so she's like, fuck you, I'm out.
That's a weak attempt, but
yeah, like
you're just going to get fucked up. Like that's the thing that would worry me about those kind of things is like, what if you do survive? You're like, fucking now you're paraplegic or like, who knows, right? Like there's no guarantee you're dying when you jump off a building. They might
that's true.
They might scrape you up or you land in a soft spot and you're just in agonizing pain laying there like,
yeah.
Like, oh, that's the shit that worries me. Or drowning, right? Like you hit the water and then what? What's your plan if you do survive? Like you're just going to sink and then drown? Like drowning is a horrible way to go.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. Like you're trying to fill your lungs full of air, but it's water and it's making you all kinds of crazy alarm bells going off up until it's too much and you pass out.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's why I'm very adverse to like even suicide is that is that it's going to be painful, like that.
quite horrific. But if we don't know about it, what can we do to stop it and to change it? I spoke to Arizona Wilder in Los Angeles.
The great deceiver Satan on that night, on Halloween, at this church.
You've conducted them in Europe and the United States. Can we start with the United States?
Yes, I have seen at rituals, I have seen George Bush, I have seen Madeleine Albright, I have seen Henry Kissinger, I have seen Ronald Reagan, and I have also, by the way, seen his wife, Nancy Reagan. I have seen Hillary Clinton before I knew she was Hillary Clinton at the time. At these rituals, she is involved. The other people that I have named and are, as I have seen shapeshift into reptilians. J. Rockefeller, and he shapeshifts. These people seem to all be connected to the Illuminati. Gerald Ford, I have seen shapeshift. Dr. Joseph Mengele, who took me around to these rituals a lot of the time, was also a shapeshifter. There are people in the European countries that I've seen shapeshift and be involved. The Queen there, I've seen Princess Margaret there, I've seen Charles there, and they shapeshift. I have seen Tony Blair there, and he shapeshifts. They all have their quirks as to how they act, even in their reptilian form. And someone who's been talking about around this subject, and it seems to be popular right now.
Who's that?
This man by the last name of Sitchin. I've seen at rituals, and he is a shapeshifter.
What do you remember about Zachariah Sitchin?
Zachariah Sitchin was someone in the rituals who are in attending the rituals who was not a major player in as far as the ritual. rituals went, but was someone that others present did not make remarks at or were very careful as to what they said around him. And he was talking about, he would be talking about doing away with people, persons that were in his way or were putting out information that he didn't feel that he wanted put out. He is very much a disinformer, and that is his job, to disinform about what is going on with the Illuminati and with the reptilians.
He actually warned me off from investigating the reptilians, interestingly.
There are eggs. It's like a nest of eggs kept down in that part where it's warm. It's very warm down there into this entrance. And these eggs are kept down there incubating. And they are the reptiles' eggs.
What have you seen the royal family do, the Queen Mother, and the other people you've seen in the rituals? What have you seen them do?
I've seen all of them drink human blood and consume human flesh, and they have their own goblets in which they have blood, and these goblets are encrusted with jewels. And they also have their own daggers, and that the dagger goes into the goblet. Wear these robes, but they don't wear anything underneath the robes, because what is going to happen, what the rituals are all about, they're going to shapeshift, and they can't have anything on under the robes. And there are orgy kind of things that go on at the rituals also. And
involving the royal family of Britain?
Yes, involving the royal family of Britain, and the sacrifice and the eating of, consuming the sacrifice, and they are involved in that.
You've seen them do that?
Yes, I have seen them do that.
People in Britain, listening to what you're saying, would obviously be staggered, I guess anywhere in the world, but what would stagger them mostly is in Britain, the Queen Mother has an image of being the nation's grandmother, the nice old lady, and good old Queen Mum, what a lovely lady. What's your experience of the Queen Mother?
She is very cold in reality, and she is very cruel. She obviously, from what I see, enjoys consuming human flesh. It's sickening.
Do they go into a different state in terms of age and strength and all these other attributes when they actually shapeshift?
Yes, the human body that they choose to occupy or take when it was young, it ages, but when they take the reptilian form, these reptilians live hundreds of years, and so they have to have taken more than one human body to live in. A lot of them are much, much older, and I'm including the Queen Mother in this, older than people think that she is. She's been in more than one body, human form. And when the time comes, if it is time for her to go on, it has been chosen that it's known that she still has life or years to go, again, she will be put into the body, the essence of her, and the reptilian form will go, or the essence of her will go into another body that is also has the ability to shapeshift into reptilian form.
One of the pure reptilian human bloodlines.
Yes.
What happens when, take the Queen Mother as an example, what happens when they shapeshift? I mean, what do you see?
You start to see changes happen, and they're happening so fast that it's almost it's the closest thing that I've seen to it is what they're now doing with computer technology. It's just a literal transformation that happens very quickly, and they get taller and they get bigger, and they don't look at all as reptilians like they do as humans, and thus the wearing of the robes, because if they were in clothes, the clothes would be torn apart.
So let's take the Queen Mother on this subject as an example. We recognize her as a frail old lady. What does she look like when she shapeshifts at these rituals?
She has, she looks like the nose portion gets very
These photographs, taken in June of 1952, show Californian police officers surveying the wreckage of a home explosion. The mystery blast, as the newspapers called it, was so violent that its shockwave shattered the windows of nearby houses. The origin of the explosion was traced to the home's laundry room, where an investigation uncovered chemicals that were so unstable that some had to be shielded from the camera flash before a photo could be taken. But the exact point of detonation was found to be an old coffee can, containing a powder called fulminate of mercury, a substance of such volatility that it needed only drop a few feet to the ground before igniting, which in turn ignited the many chemicals around it. The explosion would claim the life of one person, 37-year-old Jack Whiteside Parsons, who is believed to have been the one who dropped the coffee can. Who is Jack Parsons?
Parsons was one of the rocketeers attached to Caltech in the 1930s and 40s. He was a brilliant chemist.
Jack was known in the rocket science community as an explosive specialist. He was described as possessing a self-taught knowledge of combustible chemicals, learned through bold and dangerous experimentation.
He basically was the fuels person that worked with a team of mostly graduate students at that point.
Throughout his career, Jack reconstructed a car bomb for prosecutors in an attempted murder trial, based on nothing but blown fragments of the original. And with little more than a high school degree, Jack solved problems in chemistry that led to some of the most important developments in jet propulsion.
How can you have a guy who knows the dangers of the materials with which he works drop it?
But as tragic as the irony of his death was, the case was closed only days after the accident, with Jack named both victim and culprit. But as Pasadena police were sifting through the wreckage, they found something that forever changed how Jack Parsons would be remembered. Inside his home, unharmed by the explosion, was a handcrafted wooden box. The symbols attached to the outside were unrecognizable to all but a select few, and the interwoven text was written in a centuries-old language said to be ancient celestial speech. Inside the box were years' worth of Jack's personal writings, with each page containing a clue as to who Jack really was, and who he believed himself to be. The private life of one of America's first rocket scientists is something few understand today, but even fewer understood at the time of his death. But insights are found in exploring the beliefs and practices he dedicated himself to, in examining the private correspondence of his inner circle, who formed the secret society in which he belonged, and in Jack's own writing as he documented his ascent through their spiritual system. This is the story of Jack Parsons, or as he was called by some, Frater Balerion. In the days that followed Jack's accident, word of his death began to trickle through a fringe religious community that American media referred to as the Purple Cult. Its name usually accompanied descriptions of coffin-shaped altars and rituals performed by costumed citizens of Los Angeles, California, but the community itself preferred the name Thelemites, meaning adherence to the religion of Thelema, a word derived from the classical Greek for divine
All
will.
right, Kate.
It was a belief system
Give
that
that
had
a
only
listen.
been around for approximately 40 years, with its membership
'Cause it
numbered
should
in the
be
dozens.
doing okay
It
now.
includes traditions such as specific prayers before meals, funeral customs, holidays celebrated to commemorate important dates,
Do you hear
and a
my
central
voice?
holy book to
Yeah.
which all believers adhere. While Los
All right.
Angeles had been its
So,
nucleus for much of the
Rumble, you're
1930s,
on
40s,
notice.
and 50s, its believers were spread across the world, operating alone or in small groups, and
All right.
Okay. Yeah. No, it's just weird. Yeah, we're gonna have to figure out why this keeps cutting out.
Skippy audio.
But I mean, it's cutting. It worked for a while and then it just stops. So it's like you have to refresh it or something. I don't know why none of this is working.
You know what? I might be able to find a way. We'll just go with Riverside 110%. And then cast over to Rumble, and then you get what we send out. If you can't handle us going and watching videos, we got to find another way.
Yeah.
that
So can
doesn't
you
interrupt
do
that.
live to YouTube and run Rumble from Riverside?
Riverside?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's give that a shot then next week.
Yeah, we'll give that a shot next week. Just kind of play with that.
Okay.
It seems to do all the same stuff. We just didn't utilize it. We weren't at that stage when we were using Riverside only.
Yeah.
But we did have some of those issues. Just not. We didn't try to tackle it from the point that we're at right now.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Well, it's something to look at. We'll try
it's a journey.
Yeah. We'll
communicating with one another by mail. Among the first to break the news of Jack's death was a Thelemite named Jane Wolfe, an actress living in Los Angeles who'd appeared in over 90 films throughout Hollywood's silent era. Jack was killed yesterday while experimenting with chemicals, Jane wrote. I will keep you informed if there is any further news. The letter's recipient was Carl Germer, a Holocaust survivor living in New York who'd been a Thelemite for nearly 30 years. I am deeply sorry, was his response. I had pinned great hopes on Jack, but I must confess I remained skeptical about his attainment, of his having crossed the abyss. Jack's tenure as a Thelemite is best described as complicated, with his approach to Thelemic practices leaving many of his peers puzzled. But from Jack's perspective, he had become the religion's new prophet, chosen to bring mankind under the law of Thelema. In his personal writings, Jack described his childhood as isolated. He grew up in the suburbs of Pasadena, California, estranged from his military father, and when writing of his relationship with his mother, he repeatedly used the phrase Oedipus complex.
Which
But
means that
Jack
he was
found
weird.
comfort in what was, at the time,
that the one where he
little
wants
more
to
than a
sleep with his
backyard
parents?
hobby.
Yeah.
The act of setting off
Something like that.
projectiles with gunpowder
Oedipus complex.
and watching them slice through the sky. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure, I'm Roger Wanius. I'm a historian. I spent a career working in federal history programs, part of that time for the Air Force, a fair amount of it for NASA as the chief historian, and then the Smithsonian Institution's National Air and Space Museum.
Can you describe the state of the field of rocket science prior to the 1940s?
Well, sure. Rocketry is being pursued literally around the world. There is a lot of people who are engaged in experimentation. Some of that experimentation is very simply amateur rocketeers who are out sort of, building rockets on evenings and weekends, and then they go out and launch them. Those are not necessarily very large. They don't necessarily fly very high, but this is a worldwide phenomenon.
Jack's passion for amateur rocketry would only deepen into early adulthood. And in 1935, he and childhood friend Ed Foreman found themselves searching for fellow enthusiasts in their hometown, at the California Institute of Technology. Neither Parsons nor Foreman were enrolled at Caltech, But their exuberance and hands-on experience earned them an introduction to a PhD candidate named Frank Molina, who was researching rocket propulsion for his graduate thesis. Frank Molina would later write his impression of the meeting. Parsons was a self-trained chemist who, although he lacked the discipline of a formal higher education, had an uninhibited and fruitful imagination. He loved poetry and the exotic aspects of life. Foreman, a skilled mechanic, had been working with Parsons for some time on powder rockets. They wished to build a liquid propellant rocket motor, but found that they lacked the adequate technical and financial resources. They hoped to find help at Caltech. They were sent to me, and then this story began.
What were their goals as a group?
Mostly they wanted to explore space, and that's true for literally around the world, folks who were engaged in this. A lot of them had been brought up reading Jules Verne and H.G. Wells and these other science fiction writers, seeing movies that depicted this sort of thing, and they were excited by that.
Frank Molina's university connections granted them after-hours access to Caltech's Guggenheim Aeronautical Laboratory, and they got to work right away. One of their early objectives was to break the rocket altitude record, which stood at 8,000 feet, set by their American contemporary,
Crazy to think that's
Robert
as far
Goddard.
as they got, eh?
Yeah.
Jack had ideas he was eager to try,
trying to do
such as a
better than
concept
that.
he and
Yeah.
Foreman called the machine gun rocket, named after its approach of firing a quick series of miniature gunpowder explosions, which would propel the projectile skyward one small burst at a time. They'd bragged to the newspapers that the machine gun rocket would nearly double Goddard's record, but they'd underestimated the engineering required to automatically reload the spent cartridges while the rocket was in flight.
The reality is that in the latter 1930s, when Molina and his colleagues were engaged in this activity, there wasn't a lot of knowledge that existed in the United States.
No one knew how to build a rocket motor, either liquid or solid, really, that was very effective or very satisfactory. So
Look
it
at that
meant
science
actually
experiments,
people
They're just
that
like hiding
was
behind
here
sandbags,
were
blowing
really
shit up,
thrown upon our own
wearing
methods.
suits and ties so they look legit.
When the trio tried to compare notes with Robert Goddard, who was testing rocket engines in Roswell, New Mexico, they found him secretive and unwilling to disclose the results of his private trials. But as their experiments at Caltech continued, they attracted more graduate students to join them, slowly expanding the group's range of skills.
How did the members of the crew divide up duties in order to make the most of their individual talents?
It was pretty informal. They worked under the auspices mostly of Frank Molina, who had a lot of capabilities and was a truly good leader. Each of them had various areas that they focused on: propulsion, aerodynamics, electronics, control systems, and so forth. And they did all this sort of on an ad hoc basis. And they're building rockets. They're not very large, and they're building these things informally. It was all voluntary. They just did it because they were interested in it.
Jack was the group's chemist. Although he lacked the higher education of many of his colleagues, he brought practical experience from working at a local explosive powder company, combined with the knowledge from his own amateur experiments. And with the help of Caltech's facilities, Jack generated detailed reference charts of potential fuel sources, cataloging his search for the most effective combination of ingredients.
Yeah. That's where I want a job.
Putting these mixtures to the test often resulted in spontaneous explosions and outbreaks of fire, but equally dangerous were the noxious fumes that the burning fuel would produce. In one botched experiment, the crew attached a small rocket motor to a pendulum in order to measure the force of its thrust. But this resulted in what Frank Molina described as a big cloud of this corrosive nitrogen tetroxide, which permeated the entire building and rusted all the metallic surfaces it encountered.
How dangerous was their work?
Well, they had a nickname for themselves. They referred to themselves as the Suicide Squad.
The Suicide Squad was the beginning of a historical odyssey for Jack Parsons. It was also the start of an intensely personal journey, which headlines would later call Jack's double life.
So the newspapers were even talking
In
about his double
1938,
life.
Jack became a local celebrity after a team of prosecutors visited Caltech. in
think he was
search of an
pretty open
explosive specialist to
about this,
testify in a car bombing
semi-cult
trial.
that he was running.
Following an inspection of the crime scene, 23-year-old Jack rebuilt the bomb, explained to the courtroom how the device operated, and reenacted the explosion. His testimony helped put 3 culprits in prison and introduced Jack to the public as an explosives expert. As his early career began to gain momentum, he found companionship with a woman named Helen Northrup, a private and rarely photographed person who was described by those who knew her as good-natured and intelligent. The two met at a Baptist church dance, and within a year, they were married. Despite the environment of their introduction, neither Jack nor Helen described themselves as particularly religious.
When we first went to Pasadena, lived there, we joined and I was baptized into the Baptist church, but it didn't mean anything to me, unfortunately, I guess.
Well,
some of the doors I didn't open that I could have.
Yeah.
Jack's personal writing states that he developed a resistance to Christianity at a young age, due to his contempt for the crowd and unfortunate experiences with other children. But in his early adulthood, Jack discovered a curious book of religious essays on a friend's bookshelf. Its title was Conks on Pox, and it served as one of the earliest texts in developing the religion of Thelema, although its message was shrouded in allegory. The owner of the book considered it little more than an oddity, but would describe Jack's impression of it as real water to a thirsty man. Jack soon became captivated by its author, an enigmatic English occultist named Aleister Crowley.
And I believe in the serpent and the lion, mystery of mystery, in his name, Baphomet.
Jack learned that Aleister Crowley had a small group of followers only 10 miles from Pasadena, who operated a church out of the attic of a house in East Hollywood. Every Sunday, its members would conduct a public performance of a ritual that Crowley had written to encapsulate his philosophies, called the Gnostic Mass. At the time, this attic was the only place in the world where the Gnostic Mass was performed, and only a few photographs of these performances still exist. But over the past century, modern Thelemic churches have appeared across the country, and many of them have uploaded their own performances, using the same style of costume, temple furnishings, and script used in the original.
I believe in one secret and ineffable Lord, and in one star in the company of stars, of whose fire
that's
we
why
are
I don't
created,
like that
and
shit.
to which we shall return.
Like,
and
we're gonna learn
Father
magic
of
and
life,
stuff.
Right.
Okay,
Cool.
And then you gotta do
his
shit like
name,
that.
Chaos.
As incoming visitors, Jack and
I know
Helen
it's
would
a
have
thing.
likely been handed a
I
copy
know
of the
people
script
like it,
in order to
but it
play the
just-
part of the audience.
I get cringe embarrassment
And
from
I
it.
believe in one earth, the mother of us all.
The mother
and
of us
in
all.
one
Like,
womb,
come on.
wherein all
Really?
men are begotten, and wherein they shall rest. Mystery of mystery, in her name, Babylon.
The performance lasts around 40 minutes, and it opens with many Masonic gestures and ceremonial accoutrements whose meaning would be mysterious to first-time viewers like Jack and Helen. But as the Mass continues, it becomes sexually suggestive.
Yeah.
And at the midway point,
wow.
the priestess removes her costume entirely.
Wow. Look at this.
I know.
She's going hard.
At the close of the
she's kissing the
performance,
spear.
audience members are invited to partake in communion. But rather than a sip of wine from a communal cup, attendees are asked to each drink an entire goblet themselves. The ingredients of the wafer of bread include blood, which could be from various sources. According to Aleister Crowley's writing, the best
These
blood is of
people
the
all look like
moon
they-
monthly,
like perfect for
then
the
the
cult.
fresh
She's
blood of
got
a
like a
child
red
or
streak
dropping
going
from the
through her
host of
area.
heaven,
She's afraid
then
of
of
the sheets.
enemies, then of the priest or the worshippers, last of some beast, no matter what. The
So what I
blood is
was
burnt to
thinking about
ash
when I
and
was
mixed into the
seeing
ingredients.
this is
A
that this is
vegetarian
before
substitute is often
internet.
provided.
Yeah.
We ask that
TV,
all present partake of a wafer of bread
So how did you
and a
fucking
glass
find
of
that
either
shit?
wine or grape juice.
not
If
just
you are not
find
prepared
it,
to
but
consume the
you
Eucharist
got nothing
today,
else to
we
do.
thank you for coming and respectfully
Right?
ask you
Like
to leave at this
they're
time.
probably getting attendance.
After
Like,
consuming the
there's
Eucharist,
not
each
much else.
attendee is
It's the most
asked to
interesting
stand in
thing
front
on
of
the
the
block.
congregation
I
and
think at one
declare,
point
"There is no part of me that is not of
he
the
had a
gods."
house that he just had a bunch of people living in.
After
And
the
they were just doing
performance,
shit like
the
this all the
Parsons were
time.
introduced to
Coming
the
up.
members of
Yeah.
the church. Among them was film actress Jane Wolfe, dance instructor and priestess Regina Call, and gas company clerk Wilfred Smith, who served as the group's
Gas
priest.
company clerk.
The church had existed in
This is
Los
what you
Angeles
do at
for
night
about
during the
4
day. It's like,
years,
"Yeah,
and
today
its
you pepper
primary
salt."
function was to
Yeah.
operate as the American lodge of an international Masonic organization called the Ordo Templi Orientis, commonly abbreviated as the OTO.
Yeah, as a side
Would you mind
shoot
introducing
of
yourself?
Masonic.
I'm David Shoemaker. I am a clinical psychologist in private practice in North Carolina. I've also been involved in Thelema and multiple organizations
Goes to show
within
you, I
that,
mean, like, this
in
is
the
a
teaching
branch off,
and
but it
studying
always goes
capacity
back to
for
Freemasons,
just
you know?
about
Yeah.
30 years now.
That was the core of
David
this. You were
Shoemaker
saying
is one
that
of the
outright.
principal voices of modern Thelema. He holds a leadership position across the OTO temples throughout the United States, as well as provides training for many of the system's rituals and practices.
OTO is basically growing out of a structure that is loosely based on Freemasonry. And so the instructional method of OTO is primarily through its ritual initiations and study and practice of the principles that are inculcated through those.
The meaning behind the OTO's ritual performances are hidden in symbolism, making them inaccessible to outsiders. But the Order's manifesto offers this as its overall purpose. The aims of the OTO can only be understood fully by its highest initiates, but it may be said openly that it teaches Hermetic science or occult knowledge, the pure and holy magic of light, the secrets of mystic attainment, yoga of all forms, and all other branches of the secret wisdom of
that's
the
what it distills
ancients.
down to.
End
It
quote.
feels like.
Yeah, it always comes
While
down
the
to
origins
sex.
of the order can be traced back to the European Freemasons of the late 1800s, after Aleister Crowley took leadership in the early 20th century, the OTO began to form its own identity as the first and only Masonic body to place the religion of Thelema at the
See?
center of its belief
Crowley
system.
was
It's also
Masonic.
a socially
Yeah.
oriented
Oh,
order.
yeah.
So there's explicit aims of social change, introducing Thelema into the world, more broadly into the culture, attempting to infuse Thelemic values, Thelemic principles in the culture itself, politics and social organizations and so on.
At the time of Jack and Helen's introduction, the religion of Thelema had yet to
6-7.
permeate American culture. What little was known
Yeah,
by
hey,
the
they are
general
together.
public was found in international
Yeah.
tabloids,
You know?
portraying a group of
As
occultists
soon
who
as I
were
heard
guided
that, I
by
was
a
like, I bet you there's
single
something to
ominous
that because it caught on so
declaration.
big.
Do what thou wilt.
Like, it was a
Shall be the
Jeopardy
whole of the
category
law.
the other day.
Love is the
7.
law. Love
Really?
and will.
And I don't know what
Those
it
who
is.
attended
but
the church were invited
I
to
was like,
take
I
home
bet you there's
copies
some
of
sort of
Aleister
Masonic
Crowley's writing in
connection.
order to study the
Supposed
law
to
of
be an
Thelema for
accidental meme.
themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
like it
As we've
means
experience
just
left
nothing.
seen,
a
6,
mixed
7 right
first
next to each
impression on the
other there.
Parsons. In his autobiographical writing, Jack would describe alternating feelings of repulsion and attraction, which he ascribed to, quote, a subconscious resistance against the ordeals ahead.
You know, listening to this before, I didn't watch it. So like
While Jack was being introduced to the world of Thelema, the Suicide Squad was facing a crossroads.
I was thinking like, man, he's just
Throughout
banging
most of the
chicks left and right,
1930s,
but like,
they'd been financing their
there's that,
research
like,
themselves and
fugly
using mostly
librarian chick,
secondhand
you know?
parts found in junkyards to
Well,
build their
yeah,
rockets.
and even by like
Jack and
1940
Ed Foreman had
standards,
promoted their
Yeah.
work in a couple
like
of
to
widely
us,
read
all the
science
women are
magazines.
going to be like
But what little
ugly.
funding they were able to
Ah,
generate
there's
from
some
interested
boxes.
parties was
Sure.
then replacing the
Sure,
laboratory
Sure, but by and
equipment
large,
they damaged in their
like the kind of clothes
experiments.
they wore, how
Without
they
considerable
acted,
patronage,
behaved.
the
that
Suicide
kind of shit
Squad
I
were
don't
nearing their
care about as
limits.
much. You can just see the, you know, the lady get a good look.
Halo, halo, tu Warszawa i wszystkie rozgłośnie Polskiego Radia. Dziś rano o godzinie 5:40 oddziały niemieckie przekroczyły granicę polską, planując pakt o nieagresji. Bombardowano szereg miast. A więc
But as war broke out across Europe and the United States military readied itself for engagement, the country's scientific institutions were called upon for help. In the Northeast, the Aeronautical Department of MIT began work on a de-icing technology to keep windshields of military aircraft clear while passing through freezing altitudes. And the Suicide Squad were given a problem that only rockets could solve. Military pilots expected to encounter situations where adequate runway space was unavailable and would need a way to boost their planes into the air in lieu of a traditional takeoff. Jack had imagined their work leading to breakthroughs in weather forecasting and interplanetary exploration. So when a budget of $10,000 was offered for the military contract, it was both a lifeline and a hijacking of their work.
The Caltech Rocketeers, the Suicide Squad, if you will, under Frank Molina's leadership, reluctantly went to work for the military. They did not want to do so. And there's some stunning letters by Frank Molina that he wrote to his parents when he started into this process. And he said, I just really hate building a weapon of war and furthering the possibility of hurting other individuals. But somebody's got to stop the Nazis. And if we don't step up, they're going to run roughshod over Europe and maybe into America.
Yeah.
I
The
agree with them.
Suicide Squad
Like,
sought
why
advice
make
from
something
Caltech
else that's just
professor
gonna kill?
Theodore von Karman, who'd been mentoring the
Yeah, you
group
gotta
since
carry
they'd
that
begun
on
their
your
experiments in
conscience. Oh, that's
Caltech's
cool.
aeronautical laboratory.
Yeah, selective color.
Von Karman
Yeah.
was brilliant in all kinds of ways. He was a brilliant
What are you talking
aerodynamicist.
about?
He was a
that guy.
superb teacher, and very much a leader in the sense that he could inspire people to pursue certain kinds of things that they wanted to do. And in fact,
From a
Von
house coat.
Karman encourages this group, and they agree to do it, to accept a contract from the military.
And with the contract in place, the Rocketeers set up a base of operations in an open canyon of the Arroyo Seco in order to develop what they called jet-assisted takeoff, or JATO for short.
By the way, it wasn't a real jet, it was a rocket attached to an aircraft.
Despite the inaccuracy of the name, the word rocket was substituted due to it still being associated with fantasy fiction novels and Sunday comic strips. Von Karman would later write in his memoir that their contract was nicknamed the Buck Rogers job.
Ah, cool.
Make sure we put them in the lower racks with the firing
Buck
end.
Rogers of the 21st and a half century.
That's Duck Dodgers.
But the technological requirements were daunting. The rocket's thrust
Yeah,
would
but
need to
Buck
lift
Rogers
an
didn't say
aurcraft
that.
weighing several
I don't think.
tons and maintain
Oh,
the thrust
yeah,
long
Buck
enough for it to
Rogers. And then
stabilize in the
they
air.
ripped it off. Duck Dodgers.
Such a rocket
in the
had never been
21st
built
and a half
before,
century.
but according to Frank Molina and
Yeah,
Professor
very
von
possible. I'm
Karman,
crossing
it
those
was
two in my
mathematically
mind.
possible.
Mandela
The casual
effect.
culture of their early experiments shifted into a more regimented approach as the squad divided into designated departments. Machine shop led by mechanic Ed Foreman. Computations conducted by mathematicians Barbara and Richard Canwright. Liquid propulsion led by PhD candidate Martin Summerfield. And fuels led by Jack.
Parsons was a very fine chemist. He had studied chemistry and he had worked as an individual who was interested in developing the most effective fuels that were out there. These were essentially solid fuels at this point in time.
Jack's initial approach would be to design a custom black powder by combining his own ratio of charcoal and sulfur, mixed with oxidizers and binders to form a solid fuel sludge. This sludge would be packed directly into the rocket's chamber, and when ignited, it would provide a slow, controlled burn that would give pilots access to takeoff fields otherwise impossible. As the squad began making progress,
Like just
more
using
funding would be
charcoal
granted,
and sulfur.
but a full demonstration of the rockets at work would soon be required. Jack and other members of the squad were given security clearance and ordered not to disclose their work with anyone. And as war spread across Europe, the squad labored in secret.
So their idea was to put a bunch of bombs on the wings, and when you don't have a very large runway,
The performance of
just
the
light the
Gnostic
bombs
Mass was
off,
never
and then
far
you
from
can take
Jack's
a plane in
mind.
the air.
Yeah.
And over time, he
times
began
as
to
fast.
immerse himself in the philosophy,
Faster
history,
than the
and
Nazis,
purpose of
I think
Thelema
is the point.
through the
Well, I
writing
think
of
it
its
was supposed to be for
enigmatic
tight
prophet.
runways.
Yeah.
To his followers around the world, he was called such titles as Baphomet and the Master Therion. But to the wider public, he was an Englishman named Aleister Crowley, and his name began appearing in the press around the turn of the 20th century. As an avid mountaineer, he gained attention from journalists for his expeditions to some of the world's tallest and most dangerous peaks, where members of his climbing group didn't always come back alive. His poetry also garnered public recognition, both for its lyricism and frequently provocative subject matter, with many critics predicting a promising literary career ahead of him. However, mainstream opinion of Aleister Crowley began to shift in 1909, when he debuted a book series titled The Equinox. While the series would include much of Crowley's literary output, the book's stated purpose was to offer suitable candidates initiation into a training academy. Its members, hidden among society and practicing in secret, were students of what Crowley would call magic, the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will. The book series served as a repository for the school's curriculum, guided meditations to develop the student's astral body, and rituals for invoking the gods of ancient mythology were encountered at various grade levels, alongside methods for training the mind and body to safely perform them. Tuition would be free aside from the price of the books, but admission would be limited to those who could pass an introductory written exam, demonstrating adequate knowledge of astrology, the Kabbalah, and comparative Eastern
Also, Aleister
religions,
Crowley
among other
doesn't have to work.
topics. Successful applicants would be paired with a student of a higher grade to act as their instructor, and welcomed into the Brotherhood of the AA.
The AA is
AA.
designed to be a one-to-one training organization where each student has a single teacher and generally doesn't know who else is in the order. It's very private and the work is mostly solitary. There are no group meetings or any sort of social intercourse like that, except
See the
for
hand signals?
a very few initiatory ceremonies in the early grades. The idea in AA is that at every stage you are being taught by someone who has done the work before you, that is at least one grade ahead of you. So in order to advance, you have to do a certain set of practices and document it diligently in a magical diary that is then submitted and reviewed to your superior. And it's a training and testing organization. You simply don't advance until you have shown that you have the capacity to pass certain tests. And some of these are ritual competence. Some of them have to do with meditative results. Some of the training has to do with memorization of magical correspondences, such as planets and gods and incenses and such that are associated together, with certain
Meditative
Kabbalistic principles.
results. How do you measure
Student
that?
progress would be measured by advancement along a skill tree, with each grade representing attainment in one or more of the school's magical disciplines, culminating in the ultimate attainment, realization of the student's divine purpose, what Crowley called the true will. Students of exceptional promise had artistic work such as poetry and musical compositions featured in the book series. The impetus for Crowley's formation of the AA was a short 3-chapter book written 5 years prior to the Equinox's debut and serving as the governing law to which his school of magic would adhere.
Who is the author of the Book of the Law?
Well, I'll defer to what Crowley said about it, which is that the book was dictated to him as if he were hearing a voice over his shoulder, and that the entity supposedly dictating to him. It's named Iowas.
That guy's like a modern
So
day
in sort of
Crowley,
modern
right?
parlance, this would be
Yeah,
what we might
he
call
is.
a
He, like,
channel
runs the
writing. He didn't use that
OGL.
term, but that's the idea. That
Yeah,
this is
of
a book
I think a
dictated to him
chapter
by
on the East Coast.
spiritual
Okay.
contacts. Of course, in the mundane world where a book has to have an author, it's attributed to Crowley.
The text begins, had the manifestation of Nuit, the unveiling of the company of heaven. Every man and every woman is a star.
What does every number is infinite, there is no difference mean to you?
In asking about particular words, phrases, sentences, passages from the holy books, including the Book of the Law, I'm going to follow what is a fairly common approach in modern Thelemites, which is not to offer interpretations. What we want and what Crowley wanted is for each person to approach, especially the Book of the Law, on its own terms.
The book's overall purpose was to proclaim what it called the Law of Thelema, a law whose tenets are codified in a single sentence.
What is your favorite passage in the Book of the Law?
That's basically the secret.
Yeah, I
The boring
know.
but true answer, do it the will from the will of the law, because everything stems from one's understanding of the nature of the true will as a principle and the nature of the true will in oneself. Anything else is secondary. Everything else has to follow from that. Every tool, every practice that we train and test on is designed to open up awareness of our true will. To have that one sentence in that central holy book of the Book of the Law, I don't think I'm overstating it to say that's all we need in many senses.
Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. In his personal writing, Jack would interpret the verse as a call to express his total self on all planes of being and experience. And in February of 1941, roughly 2 years after attending their first Gnostic Mass, records show that Jack and Helen Parsons had officially been initiated into both the Magical School of the AA and the Thelemic Masonic Order of the OTO, taking the Law of Thelema as their new religious ideology.
Weird.
He looks a little demonic, eh?
Yeah, but would you like one day go out with your wife and just like, oh, honey, look, a church. Let's see what they're about.
Yeah.
And just like, whoa, this is for us. But then again, they didn't even have karate at this time, so it's not like you can join one of those. No karate, no yoga. This would be the same kind of thing.
The war in
Ooh,
Europe was
flamethrower.
escalating, with many crucial battles taking place in the air. Reports also surfaced that the Nazis were developing their own jet-assisted takeoff, although how far along they were in development was unclear. The Suicide Squad was growing in size and sophistication as more accommodations to their base in the Arroyo Seco were constructed. And slowly, a working rocket that could assist military pilots in battle began to form. While Martin Summerfield was making auspicious progress with liquid fuels, Jack's experiments in solid fuels had already produced a working prototype. The design was simple. Once the solid fuel was packed into the rocket, an igniter was activated via a small electric charge. As the fuel burned, the combustion would travel through a hollow chamber and exit through a nozzle, providing thrust. The rocket would need to burn for at least 10 seconds, enough time for a plane to stabilize in the air before the fuel depleted. A solid fuel rocket that burned longer than a few seconds was unheard of, but Jack's years of amateur experimentation and knowledge of explosive materials had prepared him for this responsibility. As he set to work, photographs show him often dressed in a full suit, with colleagues noting sweat dripping from his pores as he labored in the hot desert. And after countless hours,
Gotta look good.
Jack developed
Yeah.
a black powder-based fuel capable of providing nearly 30 pounds of
Everyone wants
thrust
some
for an
Jack.
astonishing 12 seconds. As per their military contract requirements, the squad installed a rack of prototypes onto a small test plane and conducted their first official demonstration of jet-assisted takeoff.
That does look like fun.
Yeah.
These tests, conducted in August of 1941, were the first instances of an American plane using rockets to achieve liftoff. Two planes filmed side by side, one equipped with JATOs and the other without, illustrate the reduction in takeoff time. Further testing showed that the rockets provided an abrupt mid-air boost if ignited post-liftoff. Although the demonstration was cause for celebration, there was a fundamental problem with Jack's black powder fuel. When ignited, nearly a third of these rockets would spontaneously explode, ripping a hole in the plane and endangering the life of the pilot.
Ooh.
Yeah.
After an investigation, Jack
It only
discovered that
worked
the
a third of
issue
the
lay in
time.
the fuel's shelf life. When left to sit overnight, the fuel supply would develop cracks. And once the burn pattern reached a crack in the fuel, the rocket became a bomb. Jack began mixing in various binders such as stationary glue in order to give adhesion to the fuel, and compress the mixture into the rocket an inch at a time for added density. But the prognosis was grim. The only way to safely use these rockets was to ignite them within hours after the fuel was poured, rendering them impractical for military application.
Womp womp.
I ask that the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7th,
A date which will live
1941,
in infamy.
a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
Back when it felt real. Nowadays, not so
By
much.
the time the United States had entered the war, Jack had been a Thelemite for nearly a year, attempting to advance in both orders of the AA and the OTO.
How does one advance within the OTO?
In the OTO, advancement is based on several factors. First of all, to gain entry into OTO, but then with each successive degree, you need sponsors from the degree you're applying to. So two people of that degree who agree that you are a worthy candidate. And then often there's a particular period of time you need to spend in a certain degree before advancing to the next, and then paying the dues to advance to the next degree, or the fees.
The inclusion of Jack had been cause for optimism, as members wrote to Crowley to brag of the intellect, enthusiasm, and striking appearance of their new recruit, citing Jack as a valuable asset to the order. With Crowley's blessing, Jack advanced quickly through the early degrees, with the order's closely guarded magical secrets on his horizon. His time thus far in the AA had been spent at the introductory grade of probationer, where he would obtain a ceremonial robe to wear during his magical practices, and begin a new daily routine that would signal his transformation into a thelemic magician.
I get it.
4 times per day, he would perform a short ritual adoration to the sun called Libra Resh, and twice per day, he would perform the lesser ritual of the pentagram, in which a series of connected star patterns are drawn and visualized in the air around himself, before summoning the 4 archangels who rule over the elements of air, water, fire, and earth.
So there are 6 times a day his religion takes up
ritual of the pentagram.
his day.
Practiced chronically
That's
for
too much
months,
for me.
years, decades.
Yo.
What is going on?
We've gained the
I can't
ability
pay any
to
more money for
invoke force in a few minutes or less, or banish force.
That's not a failure on my part. That is,
in a way that we could not have imagined
I chose
until
the
we had
maximum.
practiced a simple ritual like that for a long time.
According to the AA's syllabus, the probationer grade would require Jack to spend at least 1 year experimenting with any magical practices featured in the Equinox series that seemed relevant to him at the time, while documenting the results in a diary to be evaluated by his instructor. While the portion of Jack's magical diary covering his probationer grade has been lost to time, his later writings mention invocations to the Greek god Pan and the Egyptian god Horus, as among his first major magical workings. Jack explains his approach to these operations in the following way, quote, "In invocation, as in any other scientific procedure, the essential requirements are the knowledge of the operation, the quality of the equipment, and a painstaking attention to detail. An invocation is a means of tuning in on that which is desired, and tuning out all that which is superfluous or antagonistic to the operation," end quote. In thelemic magic, a ritual to invoke a particular force consists of creating a multi-sensory experience in which a place of working is filled with sights, smells, and tastes that are said to be associated with the force in question. Compendiums of spirits, both angelic and demonic, are issued to AA magicians alongside charts of corresponding sensory inputs, which Aleister Crowley claimed to have collated from various religious traditions throughout history, giving students everything they need to construct their rituals.
So he's just organized.
Jack explains, quote, "The symbols, talismans, weapons, and names selected are those which correspond to the particular power invoked, so that the entire work is actually a focusing operation. In this sense, it is proper to say that the ritual acts upon the magician, tuning his being to a particular idea. The magician, in turn, reacts upon the universe, bringing this idea into materialization by virtue of his own power," end quote. The operation typically ends with a scrying session, where the magician quiets their mind to await a vision or some form of communication.
It's like they're LARPing.
Each spiritual force is said to provide unique insights to the magician who conjures them.
They're like adults
but the
by
tangible
day,
nature of these spirits is
LARPing.
often the subject of debate. In an essay
Well, today
titled
we
The
have
Initiated
LARPers and
Interpretation of
furries.
Ceremonial Magic, Aleister Crowley wrote that these conjurable spirits were merely parts of the brain.
Is ritual magic best interpreted as the act of willing
Spirit
forth
of
certain
Galatia?
aspects of oneself, or an interaction with an external hidden reality?
When Crowley wrote that, he was what he would later admit was a fairly materialist phase, materialist
the Goetia was
philosophical
written by
sense,
Solomon.
Conceptions
Oh.
of what would normally be
So
called
he
spiritual
wrote like a
entities as being merely
foreword
parts of the
to
brain.
it or
And you will
something,
get
Book of
competent
Spells.
and intelligent
Oh.
and effective magicians who argue that that's exactly what's happening. It's simply a way of optimizing and particularizing and targeting certain aspects of our consciousness and working with them. And others will argue just as strongly that these are actual external spiritual entities, and it's definitely not just part of the brain. I think there's plenty of room for both to be true, actually.
In the summer of 1942, on the 53rd variation of the solid fuel that would power the JATO rocket, Jack Parsons made a discovery that forever changed the field of rocket science. He discarded black powder altogether as a fuel source, and instead substituted a new mixture consisting of two main ingredients, roofing tar and the oxidizer potassium perchlorate.
It's at this point that Parsons makes a leap of insight that is basically revolutionary. No one had thought of this before. No one had seen this.
Carefully heated into liquid form, this mixture was poured rather than packed into the rocket, where it cooled into a perfectly solid brick that burned more evenly, powerfully, and reliably than any the squad had tested before, with what appeared to be an indefinite shelf life. Theories have been put forth as to how Jack came up with the idea, such as seeing roofers applying the substance in one of Pasadena's developing suburbs. But his true source of inspiration remains the subject of speculation.
Wait, they try to make it seem magical when it was just what roofing tar?
Jet-assisted takeoff. Depending on the type of plane, a reduction in takeoff run of 33 to 58%, not to mention a definite increase in the rate of climb. With the igniter in place, the unit is now ready for attachment to the plane. A very simple job.
Could have just used pine tar.
Set flaps full down. Assist takeoff power switch on. Check to be sure that there's no one between the rockets and the tail. And throttle up to normal takeoff manifold pressure and RPM. Pull the trigger and hold it down, holding fast with your brakes. keep the trigger down till you feel the thrust of the rockets. When you're clear, pull the release and drop the units. They're expendable once they've done their job.
Like, that's cool, man. I got to hand it to
With
him
jet
for that.
assisted takeoff now battlefield ready,
about literary
the Rocketeers began mass producing the
Hell,
units.
you know, like,
And soon, newspapers across the country were reporting that the U.S. Navy was using them in the
for
war.
a man in a fighter jet,
If you
like,
needed a
that's
short
fucking
field
badass.
and you needed to get up in
Take
the air in a
off,
hurry, you could put this JADO on the side of the aircraft and get the aircraft to move faster, more quickly, get
And
into the air.
jettison
This was
away
great for
and
short
just keep
field
going.
takeoffs.
Fuck yeah.
Not only was the takeoff time nearly cut in half, but planes could now carry additional cargo, with the extra weight offset by the rockets. Headlines were calling jet-assisted takeoff America's new weapon against the Axis powers.
From the very beginning, remember, JATO is an explosive device. If a JATO unit drops more than 12 inches or is roughly handled, put it in segregated storage and report it immediately to responsible authority.
The Suicide Squad materialized into a proper company, taking the name Aerojet. Solid-fuel JATOs were their flagship product, and as long as the war continued, business was nearly guaranteed. To commemorate, Jack purchased a 10-bedroom, 8-bathroom mansion located in a Pasadena suburb called Millionaire's Row.
There's that house
And it
you're
was
talking
here,
about.
in the house that would become infamously nicknamed the Parsonage, that both Jack's magical and professional lives took an unexpected turn. The mansion was located at 1003 South Orange Grove Avenue and was known by the citizens of Pasadena as home to millionaire and lumber operator Arthur Fleming. Fleming was beloved in Pasadena for donating much of his land and wealth in order to transform Caltech into the prestigious university it had become. After passing away inside the mansion, Fleming was given a solemn send-off in the local press, and his home and furnishings were auctioned. But after Jack Parsons took ownership, the atmosphere changed. The OTO temple was moved from the attic in East Hollywood to the mansion's upper story, with several fellow Thelemites moving into the home's many spare bedrooms and adjacent buildings. Newspaper advertisements offering evening courses in magic and occult philosophy directed incoming visitors to the Fleming Mansion, where weekly productions of the Gnostic Mass were now performed in more lavish surroundings.
And I believe in one Gnostic and Catholic Church of light, life, love, and liberty.
You can see what Jack is angling towards, right?
During Jack's first year in the mansion,
to have his own
police
kind of
records show
cult.
local complaints of nude pregnant women jumping through a bonfire in the front yard in what appeared to be a religious ceremony. Another neighbor was on record calling the mansion, quote, a gathering place of
Can I get a hand
perverts.
job in the background?
Probably.
I'm trying to look under the table. Kind of look like that chick had her hand on his lap.
As the Second World War entered its fourth year, jet-assisted takeoff was growing in prominence as the Germans made a battlefield debut of their own version of the technology. The Navy soon increased their order to 20,000 JATO units per month.
That was fucking
And Jack's
Von
new
Braun.
company, Aerojet, expanded
exactly.
into additional
Exactly.
locations across California to meet the growing demand.
That was a contract that they did for the War Department. Proved to be very successful, ultimately led
the
with other
Army's, like,
contracts that
looking at,
followed to the
Parsons
creation
right
of the
now
Jet
going,
Propulsion Laboratory
fucking
in
sucks,
1943.
man. You know, like,
This is the
he
Jet
does cool
Propulsion
shit, like
Laboratory,
making
America's
the
first
JATO,
and
but
one of
then
the
when he
world's
goes
foremost
home,
rocket research
he's trying to make like this weird
In
sex cult
response
with
to
his
Germany's
wife.
development of the long-range V-1 ballistic
Is there
missile,
kids in the house?
an official rocket research
believe
division
so.
was opened at
I
Caltech.
can't remember. I think they get
Development of a
into it.
diverse
I
range
think
of
they do have
offensive
kids.
rocket weapons were among the lab's early wartime objectives, alongside continued improvement of Jack's revolutionary solid fuel propellant in order to power them.
Improved solid propellants have resulted from blending additives to the fuel and oxidizer. After curing, rubber-like samples of each batch of propellant, compounded, is tested for significant physical properties. But proof of success comes only with firing.
Jack's oath to the AA obliged him to openly proclaim his connection with Thelema and to speak of its principles to those around him. But Aleister Crowley's system of spiritual attainment through ritual magic didn't appeal to the majority of JPL's scientists. I knew that he was involved in magic, Frank Molina would later recall, but I never made any effort to enter into those kinds of things. I was always suspicious of mysticism. However, there were several colleagues at JPL who joined Jack in pursuit of their true will. Mathematicians Barbara and Richard Canwright appear in the OTO registration, with Barbara serving as occasional church secretary. Rocket mechanic and childhood friend Ed Foreman also joined. Out of the 4 designated departments that launched the Jet Propulsion Laboratory,
turning out to be big
3 were led by Thelemites.
that are joining a weird-ass cult.
In his memoir, Dr. von Karman would write the following recollection of his colleagues' religious practices. The members met in a room with walls of carved leather. The membership was sworn to obey the law. There is no law beyond do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. In practice, this was translated, among other things, into sex rituals, which I learned about when the FBI questioned me about Parsons. The FBI's investigation into Jack Parsons began in 1943, when special agents arrived at the mansion to question the nature of his church. Jack explained that Thelema was dedicated to the spiritual advancement and improvement of self, and to the freedom and liberty of the individual. A search of the mansion revealed a large portrait of Aleister Crowley hung prominently at the top of the main staircase, and numerous Crowley-authored books found throughout the home's bookshelves and nightstands. And despite the fact that most of the residents had never met Crowley in person, agents found stacks of letters exchanged between them and Crowley himself.
Like being the fan of a band.
Right?
Yeah.
All those dapper fucks.
The name Aleister Crowley was well known to American authorities. His reputation had been tarnished by tabloid stories of drug-induced orgies, followers being branded with heated daggers, and rituals in which neighborhood animals were sacrificed.
These women in the
all supposedly occurring among himself and his students of magic,
showing up,
earning him the title the wickedest man in the world.
Like Nexium?
Yeah,
as the FBI continued their inquiry into the Church of Thelema, they uncovered what they described as a free love cult, with members engaging in open sexual relationships with one another. The Parsons had both been conducting affairs with fellow members, and Jack was quickly developing a reputation at the Jet Propulsion Lab for propositioning many of its female employees.
Well,
various passages in the Book of the Law reinforce this culture of sexual...
A pause right there.
Yeah, it's probably a good spot to get into it next time, right? When it gets interesting.
Yeah.
You start banging chicks left and right.
Yeah. As you do, you know.
When you're the leader of a cult.
Yeah.
And I mean, he looks like he's like probably a pretty good looking dude, you know, back in the day there.
Yeah, I wanted to start...
when he gets all dressed up in his suits, you know, he's got like a couple buttons open and a cigarette hanging out of his mouth, and he's all, you know, his hair's slicked back. I could see he's getting some like homely housewife types who are like, oh, I'd love to stay in your mansion and just, all I got to do is suck a little dick here and there.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, we don't know
you get to live in a nice mansion. Fuck yeah.
Maybe he's doing that. He's doing the bisexual thing and getting it, but like it does seem to all distill down to that is just like
it always does.
Yeah, like back at that time we're led to believe that just like his story, you go to a church function, hey, you look like an attractive girl,
right?
And as soon as you say that, boom, married.
Yeah,
like already,
like, butt in the oven.
Fuck. And now you have this homely woman that you gotta like drag around all over the place that you never really wanted in the first place.
Yeah, right.
And then now he's finding around like, hey, why don't we join a cult? And then now he gets to move and swing and, you know, do all the things that he wanted to do.
Yeah,
in his way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, folks, join us next week for part 2 of the documentary.
Jack Parsons.
It'll be the same conspiracies time, same conspiracy channel.
All right. Thank you. Catch you on the flip side.
See you later.
Bye. Oh, wait, can't. I was going to go dip out of there way too fast. Outro.
Oh, outro music.
Yeah, let's do an outro.
Do it.
There.
Pine trees grow, living on a farm, eating good and raw. I said, living on the land, breaking every law. Mama told me about the city, said it's gonna fall. Down in the valley where the bloodlines mix, here in a little village, yeah, they getting their kicks. Inbred spirits with a hollow stare, environmental poison in the heavy air. For spirit's sake. Well, I saw the mockingbird singing on a wire. CIA woman setting the world on fire. She's on the TV screen putting you in a trance. The Hollywood kid never stood a chance. They got the insider trade, yeah, they got the gold. Wall Street shuffles doing what they're told. That man Jones, he was screaming at the gate, said it's a psyop, baby, and it's getting late. Ancient structures, engineering stone. Mr. Crowley